We are now in the Transform tab. Within the Transform tab, you have the choice to do transformation on characters, words, lines. And the transformation available are rotation, shear, and size. Within the Transform group here, you have what you want to transform, the characters, the words, or the lines. You have the spacing, and you have 3 pivot points that will affect the rotation. Now, it's going to take very long if I want to give you an example on each, but I want you to get, a big picture of how this operates. If you are in character, for example, and use the spacing, you will notice you are spacing each character. So you're putting more space in between every character. If you're using words, now you are having some spacing in between the words. Very useful when you're doing video editing and you want a proper text. When you use lines, of course, the spacing is going to be in between lines. Now, when you come to rotation here, the pivots, that's X, Y, and Z, will affect a lot the rotation. Let's go back to characters, and you can rotate the characters on their own axis. It's like there is an axis just flat here under the characters, and you're rotating on this X axis. Okay? Simple like this. When you come to Y, you will be rotating on the Y axis. Okay, I don't know if you can imagine a 3D axis here. If you go on the Z, it's going to rotate on the Z axis. That's the normal plane rotation that we always use. If you change the pivot point, then the axis will move, for example, and they will rotate a bit differently. If you want to rotate on the X axis, pivot X will not make any difference. But you can use pivot Y and pivot Z. I'm going to add the pivot Z and show you how the rotation now will be on the X. Notice how it's like the center of the rotation now is just behind here and it's rotating like a cylinder. Okay, notice? Okay, pretty cool. Then if you change, for example, the Y, is going to have another effect. I'm going to give it a big value. And when you rotate on the X, it's like having the rotation center just in the middle somewhere in 3D plan, something like this. You can create some cool animations here. I will reset the Y. You can use, of course, the Y rotation for character. Here you are. You can adjust the Z now. So notice how the rotation is coming up. Pretty nice. Well, it depends a lot about what you want to do. Now, if you go to words, you will be rotating, of course, you guessed it, words. I'll go for the Y and notice how the words are rotating. Now, the center of the rotation for the Y now is in the middle of the word because they are all 0, 0, 0. If you change, for example, the X, so most probably it has moved to the left, and you rotate, here you are, pretty nice. If you give it a bigger value, quite big, notice how it's going to rotate now, coming out and coming in. And I'm sure you can figure out if you combine Y and Z for X and X and Z for Y and stories like this, you'll end up with very nice animation here and very nice rotation. I will take lines. Okay, this is the one you are going to use. And if I rotate on the Y axis, notice rotating on the middle of all the lines. So all the lines are going to rotate at once. But then I will reset this one and I move the X very far. And notice now the rotation is quite nice. You can bring in the text and slam it in, depending on what you want to do and how you want to do your work, of course. I will reset the pivot X. I invite you to come along and play with the lines, characters, words, and do all kinds of rotations. Let's move on to shears. If it is character or whatever, shear does not change. You just have a kind of italic, yes or no, the way you would like it. Okay, negative or positive, left and right. The pivot points will not affect the shear at all. Now you have the sizing. If you are in character, you are sizing each character. Okay, notice what's happening. I'll put back the pivot X 0, okay, just to be in the center. And notice now the sizing is happening for every character on the X or on the Y. If you go to words, now you will be sizing each word. Okay, now on the Y, it will be like character, the same. Now, if you go to lines, it becomes a bit more interesting. The X will stretch your line. The Y will still stretch the characters, of course, stretching the whole line. You can add some spacing, see exactly how it happens. I invite you to come over and play. And the possibilities here are infinite. I can possibly give you all of them. But try to set X, Y, Z pivot points and then play with the rotation. Use the size, see how the X pivot affect the size, and so on, until you have a good picture of what you can do in the Transform tab. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next lecture.